Yeah, back again in Emoji Gaming. So this time I tried to play the Resident Evil 5 and the Nintendo Switch. So basically, I've already owned the Resident Evil triple pack on the PlayStation 4 and also recorded, I guess, but I'm not sure. But I decided to bought it again from the Nintendo Switch since basically it can make the game portable. And if you talk about Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, it is actually a PlayStation 3 game, so it is pretty good to see how PlayStation 3 game can be played on handheld devices. So that's the reason why. Yeah, it will a little bit waste money since the Resident Evil triple pack on the Nintendo Switch is way more expensive than Resident Evil triple pack on the PlayStation. So, besides, if you talk about the Resident Evil triple pack on the Nintendo Switch, it is actually a complete package from a physical game. So that's the reason why when I was buying this game, I was record the whole process on redeeming the digital of the Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. So the physical cartridge is only for the Resident Evil 4. So it is pretty long video. It's almost an hour, but I think I will not get interrupted, perhaps. But I don't know whether I will create another video besides this or not. Since basically it's pretty exhausting to record Animoji for almost an hour. So I don't think it is will be worth it. Maybe I will try to complete the remaining 1 minute and 5 second video of a failed recording after this. But yeah, it's just not significant at all. But at some point it may can be significant perhaps in terms of the uploading, because at some point the longer video that it doesn't mean it has a lot bigger view. So maybe one that make me satisfied is the shorter video one, because as a viewer I also prefer to watch a shorter length of video rather than the longer, which is obviously make me bored. But yeah, I already tried to record this, so I don't want to waste it as well. So I decided to do the remaining recording of this Animoji. But in the future, I think I will most likely try to reduce the length of the video, because yeah, even though an hour of playing games is basically not enough for completing certain prologue or introduction into the game, but at some point most of it were a little bit wasted for unnecessary things that you need to done maybe. So since it is pretty common to do, so maybe I will try to skip it and just like act as a highlight maybe. And I just don't know why I was technically doing an away from keyboard again this time, since I'm not gonna wait for the downloading of the Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, because yeah, my internet connection is not that fast, so it took me 3 hours for a single game. So it's 3 hours of downloading around 18 gigabyte games. That's the reason why this game is truly a PlayStation 3 games in terms of size, even though Resident Evil 5 is not the biggest Nintendo Switch game that I ever owned because the biggest is Mortal Kombat 11, which is basically a PlayStation 4 game that tried to be ported into the handheld. Maybe it's basically a much simpler game. That's the reason why it can port easily, perhaps. But yeah, it did still have a lot of size due to the full version of the game in terms of cutscene, perhaps. I'm not sure. I haven't tried to complete the game yet. But for the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remaster, it is basically much simpler version, I think, because it's only size less than a 10 gigabyte. So Need for Speed Hot, even Need for Speed Hot, the original Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, not the remastered version, is most likely have a bigger size, but I'm not sure because I've already played that game for so long, and it is actually one of the game on the PC that I was trying to play with the steering wheel. At that time, I bought my first steering wheel pretty cheap, which is around $30 for the Logitech Momo, and it's already had the force feedback, unlike the more expensive one that I recently buy or the one that I last buy. So it was from Trustmaster and it didn't have any feedback, but at some point it didn't have any feedback, just like when I already explained, I think, in my previous video. So didn't have any feedback means you didn't have any additional power to turn on the steering wheel. So at that time, it's just very simple. Just need to plug it in like a regular joystick wireless gamepad. So yeah, that's the reason why. And if you talk about Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered, it should be released on the PlayStation 4 and above, and it definitely have a bigger size than 8 gigabytes. So that's the reason why when you play it on the Nintendo Switch, you notice it. It's not the full version, even though if you talk about the online features, I think it can be cross-platform, so it is pretty good. See that? Yeah, I think I forgot to turn off the recording, and this is actually the reason why this video can up to an hour as usual. Yeah, I was record this in the noon for some reason, maybe in the middle of my work, or basically it's already a break time, but at some point it just immediately got certain jobs that need to be taken even when on the break. And yeah, and now the display is trying to redeem up the screen, even though I'm using the docking mode into the HDMI video capture, but the auto dimming on the Nintendo Switch is still technically used even on the external screen. But if you talk about the internal screen, I think, and with the battery, I think it will most likely to auto lock, like just like any regular handheld devices on the phone or the tablet. So yeah, I don't know when will it finally over until I finally found out that I forgot to turn off the recording. So basically, if you talk about the Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, it is not as good as the Resident Evil 4, which is released on the PlayStation 2. Because at some point, the feature inside the Resident Evil 4 is just so good. Because I always think it kind of have open world horror inside it. That's the reason why. Maybe because yeah, first thing first, the Resident Evil 4 is also a one-man quest, which is a little bit scarier than the Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, where you already got a partner for some reason, but yeah, it is pretty good. And but Resident Evil 5 still trying to have a little bit of those features, even though it is not completely the same. Like the mercenaries that selling the guns are no longer available, and now you can only buy guns in the menu, perhaps before starting a mission, which is yeah quite a shame. And it's getting worse in the Resident Evil 6 for some reason. Resident Evil 6 is more like an arcade game where you cannot basically customize it unless you're already complete the game and you unlock a bunch of features of the game, and then you can a little bit make it different. The best thing about maybe because the Resident Evil 4 is taken in the same world, so everything was just coherence into the same, even though if when you already reach the castle you cannot back into the village again, but at the main of the place it's just so dynamic, so maybe you can actually go around it, and it is pretty big map, almost like an open world, but yeah, all of you can only walk there, so there's no transportation that you can make to faster your travel. But yeah, it's still pretty immersive. And in Resident Evil 5, most likely you need to have a lot of loading screen, and you just cannot come back into the previous location of the mission, because yeah, it is not actually necessary as well to come back into the place that you have already conquered. But maybe the Resident Evil 4 stories try to support those by trying to come back into the previous place that previously was still locked, and it is at the next mission it will already unlock for some reason after going around, but it is pretty long because you need to move all along into the all of the map in order to reach the destination, which is basically not far, supposed to be not far. Yeah, there's advantage and disadvantage, but my favorite feature of the Resident Evil 4 has always been the mercenaries, because you can upgrade the weapon, and at the place that where there's a mercenary, there's obviously will not have any enemies there, because yeah, the enemies will not attack the mercenaries, obviously. If you talk about the Resident Evil 4, it is also released on the mobile, which is, but sadly it is already deprecated and no longer available, and I can even not no longer play it as well, because I think the operating system version that I currently have will most likely not support it anymore. So unless I was using an Android, maybe, which basically have a better support on legacy system, but I'm not sure, because I haven't bought my own Android phone, because the last Android phone that I was used were just can no longer start it. I'm not sure whether I have already explained this or not, but it was the Xiaomi Redmi 2 Prime, which is, yeah, sadly it just cannot be fixed unless I am willing to lose all of its internal data, but there's also no guarantee that it can be work again. So I decided not to do that, and trying to use my older phones, which is the BlackBerry Z3. It is pretty good if you try to compare into a modern phone, but yeah, the specification is never light, and it's surely a slow phone, especially when trying to run modern application or even run modern media files. So not all of media files that I want to play is supported with those phones. That's the reason why it's only like as a temporary phone, but it still works perfectly. Um, yeah, I guess because I used to have a replica Android phones. So basically, when every time that the reason why I won't buy an expensive Android phone is because I always think that the replica, which is also run on Android, is basically the same, but I think it is still different. So I used to have the replica Android phone, and yeah, it is sadly was got wiped out all of its data because it was temporarily used by other peoples, and he's just wanted to make it smoother, but instead of make it smoother, it's actually restore all of the previous malware that I already tried to delete before, and also all of my previous data as well. So yeah, it is really shame, and I wish I want to recover it someday. I'm not sure whether it is possible or not, because yeah, if you talk about recovering data, it is very hard, and it will never be the same again, even if you didn't overwrite it with newer data. But yeah, once it's already permanently deleted, it's just so hard unless you're trying to find just a specific data that's maybe really valuable. But yeah, it's just not possible if you thought about restoring into the previous state. Uh, yeah, especially when it comes to the internal storage as well, which is technically not removable. But I used to have the removable SD card that basically broken, and it's also cannot be fixed at all, unlike the hard drive, which still have a hope to be recovered. But even though I'm still having to do it as well, because recovering a hard drive is very expensive, and I don't think I willing to do that because it's surely worthy, but waiting for the process to be done and already spent a lot of money. I think I just trying not to do it yet until I already got satisfied from the newer content that I created. Maybe I will someday fix and try to recover my old content and try to have more nostalgic feeling over it. But yeah, I just don't get it. It's already more than 10 minutes of just freezing. But most likely this is not a freezing like the Twitch live stream that I tried to download on my local, but I don't know why. It the encoding of the Twitch live stream highlight it's just so heavy, or maybe until it crashed my iMovie all the time, and of course it cannot be rendered as well. So yeah, I'm not sure whether I will try to do an Animoji to my recent live stream, because yeah, there's a lot of it, and most of it is also have a long long. I have a big length of the video because yeah, if you talk about the Watch Dogs Legion that I used to play on the PlayStation 4, basically I think almost all of the progress that I used to play with those games is streamed into Twitch. So maybe it's around 12 hours perhaps. I'm not sure. But yeah, started to be exhausting holding the phone on my hands for some reason. So yeah, I'm still not sure because most likely I only tried to do an early progress of the Resident Evil 5. So maybe it should be not long. So the reason why it takes so long is just the idle of doing nothing. But I think even though it technically doing nothing, since there's still something inside or inside the video, so there's still a real footage. That's the reason why the size of the video is still quite big. I think this one has more than 1 GB as well, just like the previous Mafia Definitive Edition that took more than an hour, and also last 15 minutes was just not doing nothing because yeah, I forgot to turn off or pause the recording on my Zoom. Uh, yeah, I don't even know to talk about again because yeah, when just seeing still images, it is very hard to get an inspiration for your talking. And yes, having a speech for more than, or having a monologue for more than 10 minutes is pretty hard, especially when I don't want to do any editing, or I just want to make it just one shot for the Animoji because yeah, I just want to be as natural as possible and make it less awkward as well. So basically, when I tried to complete the Resident Evil triple pack on the Nintendo Switch and also in the PlayStation 4 at the same time, I'm trying to do a different things. So since if you talk about Resident Evil 4, there are so many ways that you can do because yeah, it has some dynamic open world feeling inside it, even though it was not an open world games. It just fairly static games. Maybe like a Mavia Definitive Edition, but I think this one is a little bit worse because yeah, it was technically a survival horror, a lonely survivor horror game, trying to find out with a lot of courage. And yeah, I just finally come back and notice that I'm still technically recording. Perhaps I'm not sure why I'm still not pause the recording. You know, the download progress is still pretty long. So most of the game that I play was actually stored on my 200 GB micro SD, and it is already full. And when I tried to buy another 512 GB micro SD for my Nintendo Switch, I eventually no longer use it because I already got my drip gadget, which is basically the same handheld, but already can support many games that I've ever dreamed of. So, and with some additional features that I'm actually prefer to do rather than just playing in the console where you cannot customize anything about it. So you cannot use a trainer, you cannot use mod perhaps. So yeah, And then for some reason, I'm just tried to insert the Resident Evil 4 cartridge inside it. And yeah, all of them was finally succeed after 5 hours of download perhaps. So right now it's already 5 p.m. in the evening. So the first game that I play is actually Resident Evil 4. So maybe I was playing all of the Resident Evil game in one single recording, which is pretty acceptable since there's only 30 minutes remaining for this video to end, but I'm not sure why I'm technically away from keyboard again for some reason, so I didn't do anything in the menu, in the start menu. So I did press A to enter into the game. So if you talk about Resident Evil 4, that was used to be available on the mobile, well, basically it is not the full version of the Resident Evil, obviously, because the size of the game, I think it's only less than 1 GB, which is not possible for Resident Evil 4 because I think even the standard PlayStation 2 version or the one that basically available on the PC as well, it's more definitely more than 1 GB. So that's the reason why if you talk about Resident Evil Mobile is really more like an arcade game. So you can only play a mercenaries mode and also the story, but just in a certain act. So there's not the full story of the game. So you cannot experience the open world inside the Resident Evil 4 mobile. So but I'm actually like it because I used to a little bit scary playing the Resident Evil 4 when I was in the PlayStation 2, even right now. So I never really complete the game for some reason. And when I tried to use a trainer in the PC, it's not even possible because you still technically can die at some point because they're just something that make you obviously die, like because of a giant rock, perhaps. So yeah, it's just pretty classic for some reason. If you talk about Resident Evil 4, classic and modern at the same time, and it just has the best story of the Resident Evil because it's about a cult. That's the reason why the Resident Evil Village is also quite groundbreaking because it's tried to take a similar story, but I'm still prefer to see the story of the Resident Evil 4 because yeah, it's more like a religious cult, which is pretty scary at the same time, even if it's not about zombies. So it's a pretty big sound and iconic Capcom background sound. So I tried to increase the brightness for some reason in order to make it everything clear. There's no immediate jump scare that I didn't see, hopefully, but yeah, that's never a jump scare. It's still technically possible. So yeah, sadly the Mercenaries mod is not available on this Nintendo Switch version because yeah, I think even in the PC version it is technically a mod, I guess. I don't know. Because there used to be so many mods for the Resident Evil 4 where you can technically change this character, but still, even if you can change the character, you still
Resident Evil
the story
4.
on your own, which has their own
1998.
terrified feeling.
I'll never forget it. It was the year when those grizzlies.
So I decided to skip the story because I technically already recorded on the PlayStation 4 before, and I'm just not sure why it is a little bit laggy. Maybe because I never really noticed that the game is actually less than 30 FPS. And this one is pretty scary for some reason, even though it's just one-on-one. Because after this, you immediately got surrounded by more people. And the driver that was accompanying the driver and his assistant that previous accompanies just died into the river, crushed by those trucks.
Is everything okay?
So yeah, one thing that's technically make this story scary as well is because the environment was technically quite old times where the technology is still technically not really available for some reason. So yeah, that's making the story even scarier, just like any other stories in the 60s perhaps. So yeah, I was trying to lure all of this zombie in order to make them free. Because yeah, I was almost dying for some reason. I think I only played this Resident Evil until this act only because I'm just trying to test the game. So after this you can technically save your progress for the first time in order to not restart from the beginning again. For some reason I'm just trying to waste my handgun ammunition because technically all of those simple enemy can technically be fight using knife. And yeah, this is what makes it pretty sad because the driver and
No.
the assistant is die, obviously. But the one that's technically got eaten in the village is only a single person for some reason. So they were not turned into zombies, both of them, but yeah, got burned like witch in the middle of the village. So yeah, of course, if you only try to get items, you obviously will not use your ammunition. For some reason, it's very dark. Even though I've already increased my brightness a little bit higher. It's zombies. I'm just getting why. Even even though all of the enemies not technically zombies, but they were all like a cannibal, mindless cannibal, like in the Grand Theft Auto 5, where you can technically drop people to be eaten, but when you try to attack the cannibal, they technically have a lot of guns as well, which is quite interesting for some reason, but a little bit weird as well, since it is already modern times, so they try to seclude their people into certain places, which is pretty much like a castle that have high walls. So after this, I will most likely try to continue the progress in Twitch live stream. And I don't know, for PlayStation 4, I think I will still technically record a little bit on the Zoom, but I'm not sure. Quite forgot it, because I obviously haven't do the Animoji yet, obviously. So yeah, I think this is technically the end of the Resident Evil 4 game, and I will most likely move on into the Resident Evil 5. Because I still technically have 21 minutes remaining of the video. So I'm not sure whether I can do Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6 in this remaining time or not. But yeah, let's just to check that I don't have to waste my time into the introduction again. So yeah, trying to close the Resident Evil 4. So the Resident Evil 6 cannot be downloaded yet, since I don't have any sufficient storage to store it. So I'm not sure what I eventually do, because I think I already used 200 gigabytes or not. Or I'm still technically use 64 128. So the Resident Evil 5 is not that scary as the Resident Evil 4. First thing that makes it not as scary is because it has a partner, so technically you will not get a jump scare, because your partner will eventually help you. Or at least maybe your partner is the one that got the jump scare first. But yeah, beside it, the setting is also not as scary as the Resident Evil 4 as well, because the place in the bride of Africa, I guess. So that's the reason why everything seems to be a little bit, I don't know, it's more like a World War Z, perhaps, rather than just like a Silent Hill. So there's actually so many bonus content of the Resident Evil 5, but sadly, in terms of the gameplay, they try to reduce the features, which is pretty sad. I also still remember when I was trying to play this game for the first time on the PC, where I'm still using an old Core 2 or Pentium 4. I don't think so. I think the Core 2 Duo and 9500 GT from NVIDIA, and it's technically review of the game, even though I only tried to technically record the footage without having any commentary or even text to explain about the game. So during that time, I was also playing the Saints Row 2, and also I'm not sure what games that I technically played, but yeah, you can all see on my channel. Because I don't want to remove those memories. It is pretty interesting because yeah, I never had the PlayStation 3 during that time, which is yeah, this game was not released on the PlayStation 2, obviously, because the graphic is already increased so much from the Resident Evil 4. So that's the reason why PlayStation 2 is just not possible. So the PlayStation 3 is yeah, there's a lot of graphical improvements from the PlayStation 2 into PlayStation 3, such as when I see from the local game store near my house, is always try to put their PlayStation 3 into the TV and just trying to see how good the gameplay is, even though it's technically just random footage, I think it is. Because when certain games in idle, they try to run some sort of introduction, especially for the Gran Turismo, I guess, because it is one of the exclusive games in PlayStation that's sadly never released on other console or even PC. So yeah, that's the reason why before the PlayStation 4 ever release. Because once the PlayStation 4 release, I'm not sure I'm actually ever to see those plays again, because ever since I was buying the Xbox 360 as or even PlayStation 3, I used to buy PlayStation 3 Slim. I think I already explained in the previous video, but I'm not sure where or whether I have already uploaded as well. But yeah, when I try to find the PlayStation 3 games or even Xbox 360 game, well, there's a lot of time difference between those. So even when
This is Kirk. Chris,
I was
can you read me?
firstly bought the
Chris here,
PlayStation 3
coming in loud and clear, Kirk.
Slim during the release
Black
of
market
the
weapons deal going down
Grand
in
Theft Auto
Union.
5 for the
That's
first
where Irving
time.
will be.
So I was technically bought the
Alpha team
game
has already infiltrated the area,
from
and
the
you will be going in as
online
backup. Rendezvous with your
sellers.
contact at the butcher's shop. You
So
can gear up and get briefed on
yeah,
the
just
mission
meet
there.
in certain shopping mall.
Roger that.
Copy. Over and out.
And yeah, it is pretty expensive technically because I think their marketplace or e-commerce is not that popular yet. So most of the time, all of the transactions are just really need to be done face to face in order to prevent any scam or other kind of that stuff. And for the Xbox 360, I think I was buying it on the 2018 or perhaps or 2017, I'm not sure, but I think I was buying the Kinect in 2019 from my college friend. So previously I'm just trying to do the regular games. Even 2020 I was technically buying the Kinect. But I think it was late 2018 or late 2017, I'm not sure. So yeah, I'm just trying to buy the Xbox 360 for playing the Saints Row, and I was technically just download the game So well, because yeah, it is pretty hard to find the Xbox 360 physical game anymore. Since when I tried to visit the local game store, they're no longer sell the Xbox 360 game. They do sell a little bit, but it's just not good because there's only like few games that technically I don't interested in. So yeah, that's the reason why I tried to bought all of the remaining games that's still possessed by my college friend who would technically sell the Kinect to me as well. So that's the reason why. But I never really played all of the
Grab your
game
weapons.
because
The operation's already started.
2020 I'm already don't really like to play games for some reason. Because even though it was technically the beginning of the pandemic, but I don't know, most of the time I'm just trying to waste my time doing unnecessary stuff for some reason.
You'll find your weapons in the case there. Take whatever you think you need.
It's actually the saddest thing because the people that are trying to help to provide the guns for
Take
some
your
reason
weapons already.
is the one
Alpha
that
team
get
isn't going to
killed
wait around
eventually.
forever.
Even though it seems like this building is kind of the border between the infected zone and not uneven. Maybe it is already infected this time. But since we haven't got any weapons, that's the reason why. Just they will not attack us yet. So I just don't get it why those guys didn't follow us instead. Maybe calling some more backup. Because previously it's just more like an investigation. Just killing. Outbreak. So there's 10 minutes remaining of the video, and yeah, I will definitely not play the Resident Evil 6 because previously I haven't wrote it as well because it was insufficient memory.
Remember,
So
we're
I
a
can
team.
do it
Whatever happens, we stick
time.
together.
Don't worry.
Besides,
I may not be as big as you,
if you talk
but I can still hold my
about
own.
6, each of the act is also pretty long, so that's the reason why I try to make it on the single video perhaps. So saving on the middle of the progress is just, I'm not sure, I think it's not possible. Especially when there's so many point of view, different kind of characters and their own story. So basically, it's all about slum area. But yeah, if you talk about slum, it means that there will be a lot of people inside those small area. And maybe that's the horror things that try to be done in this game. I'm not sure because the next place will actually quite far, so it will most likely be a difference. Because yeah, each of the places kind of have their own horror environments. And Yeah, sadly, even though I'm already on the
Come
Resident
on!
Evil
Okay.
triple pack on the other console, they just cannot integrate the progress for some reason. Even though those game is supposed to be the exact same, but
Did you hear that?
yeah, maybe because
that building.
Nintendo is more like an Xbox rather than a PlayStation. So this is actually the first encounter with the enemy, if I'm not mistaken. So the uninfected is trying to force to be swallowed with some sort of alien, and then I eventually skip it for some reason because I already
What the hell
record
just
the
happened?
exact
They didn't move
same
like any zombies I've ever
footage.
seen.
Technically, even though it's only a single enemy, not long after this we will got surrounded by so many people. Because during the mass oration, we got suddenly noticed because sightseeing from far, actually from near.
We should keep moving. They'll find us soon.
So technically, even though this was in the slum area, but this is not actually located on the middle of the city. So it is technically in the coast of the city. So that's the reason why it will end up in the near the beach or near the port. This technically make it that scary for some reason.
We need to get out of here.
Because it will make them easy to escape to a different country as long as they can technically fly from there.
Man, Kirk. The locals were hostile and we had to use force. We don't have any contingency plans for this situation, do we, Kirk?
Roger on the locals, but your orders still stand.
What does that mean? Was HQ expecting this?
Still not. Basically, if you talk about the Resident Evil 5 timeline, it is actually after the Resident Evil Revelation 1 and 2, I guess. So that's the reason why there is a little bit more mature HQ. Perhaps, I'm not sure. That's the reason why sadly Jill Valentine has got brainwashing here in this game. Because previously we can play it on the Revelation, but it got out for some reason. That's the reason why in Resident Evil 6 the storyline was actually take place after this, and it's just making it weird for some reason. Because they tried to add something that technically to remain enemy perhaps from that was not beaten yet. It's just like the Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil 8 when they tried to extend it even further. And yeah, it will definitely way more scary as well, since playing it in the first person will definitely give more jump scare than can ever imagine on the third person. Even from the top-down view, like the original Resident Evil, it's still quite scary for some reason, even though I always thought that the top will definitely not create any jump scare, but at some point the top view is just intentionally not showing everything, which make you didn't have lose visibility, so jump scare is still definitely possible. So yeah, they're really smart to decide. This is the place that we will eventually get ambushed without running in a certain place anymore, unlike the previous game. So I'm not sure whether. I think every time we kind of quit the game, it will technically save the game. I'm not sure, because yeah, it didn't have any iconic typewriter like the previous Resident Evil. So yeah, this is actually the mercenaries feature that you can find. It is pretty basic, sadly. Unlike the Resident Evil 4 in the form of people, which is pretty iconic because I always say the same words over and over again when we try to approach them and buy some guns. And I'm not sure the guns upgrade in this game will also make the game make the weapon have a different physical design model. And yeah, it is actually the end of the video. Is only 40 seconds remaining. And I'm just not sure why I don't immediately stop the recording. Because yeah, most likely I think I never really noticed to pause the recording or not. Even after technically already turned off the Nintendo Switch, I'm still continue to record.